course, I'm disappointed with the decision of the appeal court. We put forward our view that provincial jurisdiction was paramount in this instance. There have been a number of cases recently. The government of Saskatchewan had asked their Court of Appeal for jurisdictional direction on the ability to implement a carbon price in Saskatchewan. We sided with the federal government at that time. In the case just completed at our appeals court, the province of Alberta sided with the federal government against our view of provincial jurisdiction. So we always knew that as we were discussing where we go with environmental issues that weren't contemplated when our Constitution was developed initially back at the terms of Confederation and most recently in the 1980s when the Constitution was repatriated, these are areas of law that need to be defined. We said all along that it was probably likely a Supreme Court decision. Mr. Eby, the Attorney General, is reviewing our appeal options at this time. I've not read the ruling, I've only been briefed on it, but I'm confident that we do have the jurisdiction. The Court of Appeal disagreed. There are other courts, higher courts, that we will likely appeal to, but I'll leave that to the Attorney General to resolve over the weekend.
So do you have any immediate next steps?
Our steps were to protect the interests of British Columbia when it came to moving deleterious substances through our province. We believe that's a right that we have under the Constitution. The Court of Appeal disagreed on our submissions most recently, but the Supreme Court's there as an option for appeal. We'll have to see what again, the details of the ruling. But our objective from the beginning was to protect BC's land, water, and people. And we were very concerned, of course, about the transportation of diluted bitumen through and other deleterious substances through British Columbia without any ability for us to manage that through our environmental management processes. We have legislation internally that protects us, but when there's a trans-boundary issue, as there is in this case, the court found in favor of the National Energy Board. That's a debatable point. It was resolved in the Court of Appeal, and we'll see if we can go to a higher court.
We don't have much time. I understand that federal cabinet ministers are set to approve this project, approve or not approve, middle of June.
Yeah.
So do you see it, time is of the essence, obviously, and we have to move quickly. Do you see it going to an appeal, and what other avenues do we have to pursue?
Well, certainly the Tsleil-Waututh decision, which was a federal court decision, the Tsleil-Waututh First Nation in Burrard Inlet was successful in their application to the courts that found that the National Energy Board did not adequately consult with them, the title holders in Burrard Inlet, about the coming and going of diluted bitumen. The federal government had to regroup and renew their consultation with Indigenous people. They also had to, for the first time, look at the impacts of our marine environment of shipping of diluted bitumen in and out of our Canadian and provincial waters. This was an area of oversight that I talked about during the election campaign. My biggest concern as a coastal dweller was always that the federal government did not give due consideration to the negative consequences of a catastrophic event. And interestingly, I'm here in Kelowna today to talk about preparing for catastrophic events, natural phenomenon and sometimes human-started phenomenon like wildfires. So I believe it's the responsibility of the province to be prepared at all times to protect the public interest, to protect the people and the economy of BC, whether it's wildfires, whether it's floods, whether it's catastrophic oil spills that would have an impact on our salmon, an impact on our marine economy. I don't have a different view today because of the court decision. I'm going to continue to advocate to protect those things that are important to British Columbians.
Premier, you've always said that you'll use every tool in your toolbox to prevent pipeline expansion. If this court process doesn't work, what other tools do you have?
Well, as I say, the Tsleil-Waututh case is still making its way through. The federal government has made efforts to speak and consult adequately and accommodate interests of First Nations. I know the Chief of Coldwater is here today, who has a particular point of view on that question that's more in line with mine than the federal government. So we're going to look at the ruling. I haven't had a chance to read it. It's just out today. My very capable Attorney General will be reviewing our ability to appeal, and we'll see where we go from there. I've had preliminary conversations with the incoming government of Alberta. I'll be meeting with Premier Kenney early in June, and there's a Western Premiers Conference in Edmonton later in June, as well as a First Ministers meeting, or a Council of the Federation meeting in Saskatoon in July. So I suspect there'll be a lot of opportunities for me to talk about these issues and to assess what steps British Columbia takes. But first and foremost, I think it's important that we recognize and remember that Canada is a coming together of diverse communities, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, different orders of government. Provinces from time to time agree with each other, from time to time disagree. There's always been historically a tug and pull in our federation between the supremacy of federal jurisdiction versus that of provincial jurisdiction. And when it comes to areas of the environment, this is an untested area. That's why we went to the courts. That's why Saskatchewan and Ontario are going to the courts for their particular concerns on managing and regulating environmental issues. So I believe that this is a continuation of what has been a historic discussion in Canada. Where does the ability to protect citizens rest ultimately when it comes to the land? I believe it's the provincial jurisdiction. Others will argue that it's federal jurisdiction.
And how long will it be until we hear back from you about that, whether or not you will appeal?
Not later today. Early next week, I suspect. The legislature's back in session on Monday, and that'll give me an opportunity to have a full briefing from the Attorney General and the legal team that was in place for this appeal.